Welcome to the Real Estate Jam session. And boy, do I have a special guest for you folks today. I've got Michael Bull. Michael is, I want to say he's kind of the OG of commercial real estate content being put out. I hope that doesn't make you sound too old, Michael. There you go. You're putting your glasses on right there.
I look my age. I look
Michael,
smarter.
it looks good. Kind of preppy, although that probably dates me because I don't think preppy is anymore. Oh, that's right. Now you're going for a modeling gig. Michael owns Bull Realty out of Atlanta, Georgia. He's got about 50 agents there. He's been in the business for 30 years. You've done some pretty impressive numbers, over $5 billion in sale and lease transactions. He's a public speaker that I got to see just last week at the Commercial Real Estate Influencer Summit. And honestly, Michael, I think we all agreed I'd like to have had you had more time while you're up there because we had a lot more questions. So I hope today we can get the opportunity. And the reason, I called Michael the OG is he has the America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I think you had to be about one of the first ones to be doing a commercial real estate show on air, weren't you?
Yeah, I think so. 11 years ago, we started doing it as a radio show and we immediately put it out as a podcast, and not many people were listening to podcasts back then.
Yeah. And there's a lot that I got from last week, but what made you, I don't think we touched on that last week. What made you want to get in front of the camera and give this market, add all this value? Is it to bring in more business to your company? What was the purpose?
I don't think I originally wanted to get in front of public or on cameras, really, but I agreed to do a radio show in Atlanta 11 and a half years ago. And I agreed to do it. I was just going to take calls from listeners, and it would have ended up really being an Atlanta local commercial real estate. And my business was local at that point. 11 or 12 years ago is really all I did. My company was brokers in Atlanta, so I kind of did it first, to benefit the business and to generate leads for my brokers at my shop, and then it just turned into something a lot larger. And when I realized it was really beneficial to people all over the country, it grew and grew up to 60 radio stations at one point.
Oh, so this is a national podcast that you're putting out. So, this is impressive stuff you're doing. Now, you're doing it weekly?
Yeah, we've done a show every week for 11 years.
No miss weeks. Well, your wife must get... She must be a patient woman.
And my brokers, and in the first, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, it was a tremendous amount of work and time, and
sure,
just very, very time consuming. And then, over the years, it's gotten, a little easier. We have a nice studio, in my office, and I have a team that helps me do things. But it's important that the quality of content is there.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a professional commercial broker and put out crap quality. And so our goal is every week that the quality, the valuable takeaways are more than the week before. So it's like every week we want to be better than last week.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know what everybody's thinking. Michael, how do you have the time to do all this? How do you just have a schedule? You say, okay, this is the time I'm setting aside just to work on the show?
Well, in the beginning, I worked every Monday night and every Tuesday night for the first 4 years or so, from really 6 to about midnight, every Monday night, every Tuesday night, and then sometime during the day, because it just took a lot longer and a lot more work in the beginning. But now I have a staff. I have a professional producer who studied it in college, and I have somebody who helps with the social media part. I have somebody that helps me with the coordinating of guests and the equipment and getting out there. So basically, I pick the topics, I pick the guests, and then I do the interviews. And then I walk back in my office, which I'm in now, and start selling real estate again. And our studio is here in my space.
Yeah.
So I don't have to go to the radio station studios anymore. So I'm able to walk in, do the show, walk out, and people take care of the rest.
That had to be a pretty big expense, I'm guessing, to build that out. But it has to also be very handy to have it right in your office. And it's now you're doing one show. How do you do it? Do you do one show a week that you record, or do you have like several, you'll shoot several in a day and then put them
Yeah,
out?
I do one a week, and I'll typically be a week or two ahead. So
Okay.
we'll have a show or two in the can, as they call it.
Right.
Showbiz talk in the can, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, so we don't want to get too far ahead because the information is very timely in most cases. Most
Right.
of our topics are very timely, so we try not to get too far ahead.
Okay. Do you find that what you're doing is increased your business considerably?
I wouldn't say considerably.
Okay.
It doesn't do as much as you would think or hope, I guess, for the
Right.
amount of work and money it involves.
Right.
But it definitely has helped. I
Yeah.
lead a team that sells office buildings, and we made a point starting about 3 or 4 years ago to know all the owners of large office buildings around the country. And when we went around and met them, about half of them knew of me in the show, and that was helpful. But there were about 10% of them that were huge fans. They
Oh
were like,
yeah.
"Oh, we get to meet Michael Bull? Absolutely, yeah, let's do it." So it's amazing how the quality of the content of the show and how many people don't really even know about it. But then you have the small group of people who just really get a lot of value out of it and listen to every show every week. And we've certainly picked up some business from that.
Well, even in our office, a couple of our agents, they asked who you interviewed. I said, "Oh, Michael Bull," and I started to say who you are, what you go. Oh yeah, I listened to him. So I bet that may not have been a fair question because it's tough to put a dollar on of me to ask, by the way, to put a dollar on it because it's probably pretty broad and you probably get business. They just don't mention that they saw you somewhere.
Yeah, and some people do. We had a major group that owns real estate all around the world. Call me and take me to fly in and took me to lunch and said, started telling me about their real estate plans, and they stopped and said, "Wait, you haven't signed an NDA?" And it's interesting because we're telling you things that we've never told anyone without a really harsh NDA. And the reason is we felt like we already know you. All of our real estate people listen to every show every week.
Yeah,
And I did several assignments for that big client
sure.
over the years. So yeah, we have received some leads from it.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I just think it makes you more approachable because you're on camera. People see your personality. They see you speaking. They know you're knowledgeable. And so it's easier to pick up the phone to call somebody like that instead of having somebody, putting their marketing out and you saying, okay, this is interesting. Let me reach out to them. So I think it's cool. But now, Michael, what was interesting to me is, we were at the Commercial Real Estate Influencer Conference in Tahoe last week. And, it was really amazing to me to see how many people are taking to the internet to really market themselves. And so if I'm thinking about starting my own podcast, can you kind of walk us through what you think might be the easiest way? Because the first of what I heard a lot of was, I just don't have the time. And, they just don't know the first steps to take. Can you kind of walk us through what you think is a kind of a guided path of how we can get started?
Yeah, and I think your point there about how to get it started is keying in first is what is the return on it, and should you be doing it? If you're an independent agent, is it worth the time for you to do it? And then think about, all right, who's my audience? Who do I do business with? Who can I help? So if you're a tenant rep broker in Phoenix, or a retail tenant rep, in another city, think about who your customers and clients are, who you can add value to, and then do a show for that audience. It's you want to think if you're going to get some return out of it, it needs to be valuable to the people who listen to it. And it might not be as important as how many listeners you have, but how many listeners potentially could do business with you.
Right.
So the first thing I do is design the show so it benefits the listeners, and it's people and companies that you want to do business with and can really add value to them. And then just go to Podbean or something like that and sign up, and you can create a podcast with not that much equipment these days,
Yeah.
And your audience is going to grow over time. So I wouldn't be real concerned, that you're not really, really good at it when you start. You'll get better at it. I think I
Yeah.
mentioned when I spoke, the first time I spoke in public as a speaker, I bombed. I was terrible. And, and the first show I did, I didn't know how bad I'd really be. So I didn't tell a lot of people. But I was okay at it. And I've studied a lot, taken a lot of classes and done a lot of reading and gotten better, each week over 11 years. And I hope I still get better over the
Yeah.
next 11 years if
Yeah.
I'm still out here.
Yeah, I think it's if they realize that, it doesn't have to be that difficult. It doesn't have to be that time consuming. I mean, you're at a whole different level in what you're doing, right? But to get started, they have to be patient, find your audience, be patient, create good content that really brings value. And I think that's kind of the key pillars you need to be taking a look at if you're starting a podcast.
I tell you another pet peeve of mine when I listen to podcasts is if it takes too long to get to valuable takeaways,
Yeah,
then people just want to turn it off. So what we try to do is not have long introductions and try to get to really good valuable takeaways right away. And I try to give as much valuable takeaways in a show as possible.
yeah.
Kind of like I think what you're doing here with me, and so it's valuable to the listener.
Yeah. And can you kind of walk us through the hurdles that you had to overcome? Because I think that's something that a lot of people, you want to be kind of thinking long term. How should I be preparing for, what did Michael have to go through? What are the things he went through to get where he's at? And, there had to be obstacles along the way, I'm sure. Could you walk us through a few of those?
Yeah, I guess one thing is the disappointment of how small the audience is as you get it going.
Mhm.
There's so many options for people's time now. It's very difficult to grow. So that audience growth is so slow, and that's probably the most frustrating thing because it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do a quality show. And then you look at the small amount of listeners and things, and it can be frustrating. So you really got to hang in there and realize that if you're giving valuable content to the people you want to do business with, then it can be worthwhile. Just need to hang in there. The other thing I guess is picking good topics. If you're going to have guests, picking good guests, and not getting people who are just trying to market themselves or their fund or I
Well,
think you
yeah,
want to get guests that are giving something to the audience.
yeah, yeah. The Let's go into finding the guest. How do you go out? How did you originally? I know now you have other people doing it for you, but how did you start finding guests? You just start rolling calls?
Well, when I would think of a topic, I think of a topic that I think would be most interesting to commercial real estate professionals in the US. And then I think about who's the best source, who is the best guest to provide insight on that in the country. And then I go down from there. If I can get the best, who's the second best? And that's the way we've done it. And in the beginning, you don't get as good a guess.
Right.
It's no, who are you? Why? And now we get really, really strong guests, and the biggest analysts and economists in the country want to be on our show. So they're reaching out to us, and we get constant contact every day from people wanting to be on the show. And that's one of the disappointing things is having to say no to so many people because my idea of the show is it's very valuable to the listeners, and it's got to be the listeners all over the country, whether you're in California or you're in New York.
Right.
Yeah, it's getting good guests is key,
Right.
and then getting good information out of them. One thing I learned early on was a lot of the guests would like to have questions in advance, and when you're new, that's probably helpful. It's like when you're speaking, having a PowerPoint presentation to crutch on. But I found that if you make sure the questions are valuable to your audience and you think about who the audience is and what they want to know, and then you go with the flow with the interview and ask them a few questions and then listen very carefully to what they're saying, think about your audience and what they want to know next, that you'll have a much better show and a much better interview instead of having just set questions.
Right. Yeah, depending on the person, some people will ask me for questions. Like I emailed you yesterday, hey, can we just talk about your podcast? I know that I had headlines, or you had other talking points, but, and you were gracious enough to say, yeah, this is, because I thought this was really important to continue this conversation. And you said, absolutely. And I think you're very lucky that you can talk to all these points because you've been in the business for so long, but somebody new, they better stick to what they know in their marketplace.
Yeah.
How do you tell somebody no? If somebody says, I want to reach out and be on your show, I mean, at the level you're at, you have to have people that you have to say no to.
Yeah, I mean, we just say, look, we'll keep you in mind for future shows, and and I think a lot of them understand that when they look at the caliber, if they look at the caliber guests we have, then most of them will probably understand. There's probably some people contacting us that never even listen to this show, and so they may not realize that no, you're not going to get on that show.
Right.
But the hardest thing I think that I've done is when I've actually recorded a show with someone and then it wasn't up to a strong enough level that I wanted to use it.
Right.
And when I've done that, I have to just call them and let them know that, look, we had a lot of quality shows and a lot of them are timely, and and it just didn't make the cut, and we apologize. We'll provide you with the audio video if you want to use it, but it didn't make the cut, and we apologize. But we're not being paid to have these people on, so
yeah. Now, would it be a good idea for somebody that's thinking about doing a podcast to first go out and see about getting themselves on other people's podcasts? Wouldn't you think that'd be a good path to get started, to kind of learn the process?
Yeah, that's a good idea to kind of get used to how people do podcasts. That's a good idea. Some other things I did was take public speaking classes. I took a class on stand-up comedy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
How did you do? Did you ever go to a club and do it?
I did. Yes, it's on YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, is it really?
YouTube. Search Michael Bull comedy. I did.
Well, I think maybe we're going to have to just make a note and add that to the link.
I took
it's all right. I'll search for it.
I took classes on teaching adults, got a certification. I took classes on hosting television shows. I studied a lot of the famous hosts around the, throughout history, like Johnny Carson and things. And obviously I'm nowhere near Johnny Carson, but, just really learning from people who had done it really well. Also was reviewed by a guy at Salem Media that had been in the business a long time when I'd started the show early on. And they asked me if I wanted to be reviewed, and I said, absolutely. And one of the things he said was, Michael, he said, the worst thing about your show is it has a very specific audience. Mm-hmm. He said, the best thing about your show is it has a very specific audience.
Yeah.
It's extremely valuable to that audience, and you know exactly the value to give them. So I think what he was saying is it's terrible radio, but a very good podcast.
Well, okay, maybe, but I think because of social media, we really are more about getting the likes, the reposts, and all that. When in fact our focus should be on creating good content that are valuable to our current listeners. Don't worry about all those likes and all that. Put out content for your audience, and then it'll grow. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think if you're concentrating on value to the audience and to the audience that you want to reach and can add value to and do business with, right? I see some people doing podcasts and I'm like, how's that helping your business?
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, if it's a hobby, okay, it's a hobby, but
right.
If you're taking time out of your business day to do it, it might be more than a hobby. So you need to think about the return.
Yeah, I think both you and I know that we're, this isn't a hobby for us. We don't just want to be in front of the camera because we're obviously not Brad Pitt, but, and I get reminded of that often, but, it's something that we want to really do to bring value to what we're doing, our industry. And I think what is critical about doing this is, the average age of a commercial real estate agent is mid to late 40s, correct? Somewhere in there?
Yeah, probably, or maybe older.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think a lot of this technology that's being utilized these days is the younger generations are finding it interesting. And I think it's bringing them, I mean, you saw the average age up there in Tahoe this last week was, we probably weren't in the early 20s, but I'd say we were at least in the 30s. So these younger generations are starting to take interest in it. And I think a large part of that is due to what we're doing now. The new take with the social and podcasts and, would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, it reminds me, I was hiring my first producer, and he'd graduated from Auburn, and had a degree in it. And I thought he'd be great, and was about to hire him. I said, wait a minute, what do you know about social media? He looked at me and said, Michael, I'm 23 years old. I know all about social media. Everyone I know that's my age knows. Oh yeah, what was I thinking?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just honestly, Michael, the thing that gets me is how fast they can type with those on those phones. I'm like, I can't respond. I mean, they've asked 3 questions by the time I give one answer out. So it's very powerful. But I do think that we are going to start seeing a younger generation finding this industry more attractive, and so I think it's starting to evolve finally. And I mean, I know that's what I'm seeing in LA. I know that's what I saw up in Tahoe with some of the people. I mean, I saw people who are in their 60s they're pretty strong on social. And so I think it's really going to help our industry as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. And I love seeing diversity and the younger people. In our shop, we have a lot of diversity and a lot of younger people, and it's fun to help them and to work with younger people. I think the people in my shop, they learn a lot from me, but I learn a lot from them as well.
Yeah.
It's just great to have a very diverse group, in your business. It's very beneficial to everyone.
Yeah, it's fun to be around people that are really looking for a way to transform an industry. They're looking at ways to do it better. And I think, as I've gotten older, it gets a little bit more comfortable because this is what's worked all these years. I mean, and I've had agents say, you need to, a younger generation or younger agents say, hey, take a look at this. And, it's worked for us. I said, but I'd rather see them try something than fail than not try at all. And so I'm still not that tech savvy, but I'm a lot more than when I was kind of forced to, right?
Right.
So, I think it's going to be a good thing, a great thing for our industry, and I think it'll help us grow. Any other hurdles that we can talk about that you think are critical for anybody watching to know?
Well, I think if you're an agent, and especially talking about the group of newer, younger folks getting in, you want to find training. And the biggest thing that I think made me successful, and I started at a really young age, was I studied sales a lot, and I searched out the best training or all the training that I could ever find on commercial brokerage throughout the country, and I devoured it. And one of the things I found is I was growing my team at Bull Realty, which I created 23 years ago, was that there was a lot of training missing. There was a lot of things like overcoming objections and helping clients understand the value of proper pricing and things like that just weren't out there. So I found I had to create it, and I created it and I improved it, year after year after year, and I finally produced it. So now I share that training with the world. And there's 21 1-hour videos. You get them in the cloud.
Okay.
It's commercialagentsuccess.com. And, it's very little income to me, but the people who license those and get them, they just absolutely love them. It's like, there's nothing that's been out there before. And I think that's one of the hurdles of younger folks getting in the business is there's just the training out there is just terrible.
Yeah.
There's a few good folks out there, Mike Lipsy, Rod Santamonsimo, Bob McCombs. But this training is different than those guys. And I recommend all that coaching and training to everybody. I think the more you practice and prepare and train, the better you're going to do in a market, in a business that's this competitive and has this unlimited income potential that it has.
Yeah. That's one thing. You said that my favorite word, passion. If you don't have passion for commercial real estate, this business can eat you alive, and it doesn't take long to do it. There's a lot of good people in this industry, And, you know, it's, I mean, I hear what you had to go through to become this great podcaster. Well, to become a top-notch real estate agent, you better be YouTube, podcast. You better be doing like classes like yours, which by the way, I want to post, I'm going to get the link from your classes. I'm going to post it down below in the video. So, so everybody can link it to you. But, you know, this industry, you have to have passion. They have to have people like yourselves that are out there leading the way. And that's going to help this younger generation get involved and really evolve this industry. So, well, Michael, thank you very much for coming on today. I know you're a very busy man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me. I will put Michael's contact information below in the video. I'll put his classes in the video and his podcast. And so that way you can find him anywhere. Make sure you tune into his podcast because it's very powerful. He gives a lot of great information. And Michael, thank you for coming on. And
thanks for having me. Appreciate
I hope
it.
we can do this again soon. And if you haven't done so, folks, make sure you subscribe. Actually, go into Michael's podcast, get in there and check it, subscribe to him as well. And we'll see you again in a few days. Thank you.